Hello. Sorry, I wasn't prepared. I pushed the button and then I realised I still had my AirPods in. So, we're in for a big one. Well, I'm here for a big one today and I've got a whole 8 minutes to get it sorted. So, planning again. This one is a very cool one. And it's one that, it's essentially, you could say it's the same thing I've been working on since day dot. I'm just getting closer to the answer, or closer to taking the trouble to try and make some difference to this, try to prove this mathematically, play the game of maths. And so I posted up a video called Gravity is Not a Force, and the theory of general relativity, Einstein's theory. And they talk about this thing called the inertial observer, which is a super cool concept. And it's like, if you watch the video, you know what I'm talking about. But I'll just summarize it. It's like if you're falling, are you aware that you're falling? Especially if there's nothing to reference. There's nothing to experience. It's just you're literally falling. You're not aware that you're not going anywhere. There's nothing to test your reality with. And so the guy falling off the building is the same as the person who's out in the middle of space with no large objects around and nothing to look out and actually see and do any kind of observations against. So I thought that was a super cool perspective, because if you look at how human beings interact, it's a very similar thing. But how I came to this video is not from that perspective at all. It's from the perspective of, if I'm going to simulate what it looks like to be conscious, or even consider what it looks like to be conscious, the answer's in here, but it's most probably somewhere out in how we perceive the world. And the only thing that I can find that even remotely looks like something that's self-referential, that can experience itself, is matter, through the interaction with gravity. And so this is how I came across this video. And if you translate it into how we interact with the world, it's super cool, in my view. Because it talks about observers and perspectives. It talks about how certain matter is attracted to other matter. And you'll see things like birds of a feather, that I wrote up there, like birds of a feather stick together. So people who think a particular way attract other people who think a similar way. Funnily enough, it's either the same way or the opposite of the same way. So you might have heard opposites attract in relationships. There's this really cool experience with that. These are all matter. This is all very similar to how matter interacts with itself. The really cool thing that I loved about this video, this guy's really good at, is that he showed at 2:35 that Einstein didn't really, he just took the current theory and looked at it from a different perspective. And I think that's what it's going to take here for us to discover what it is to create like something that's actually conscious of itself. That our consciousness, and really what there is that our consciousness has to be the thing through which our ability to make sense of the world comes forth. I don't think they can be two separate things. I think they must be related. I think that our ability to turn things and make sense of the world has to be a natural extension of our own consciousness. The number of people who believe that their thoughts, feelings and opinions are them tells me that that's got to be the case. I drew this picture here, and this picture is a picture of a gravity well. And the reason I drew it is because it's very, very indicative of how we seem to, our consciousness seems to operate. Like, it's very difficult to see this far down. Like I might have said previously, when I say this far down, if you were to sit and look down, it just seems to go forever. It's quite a challenge to see our own consciousness. I think I've created it previously as It's like trying to glimpse the singularity of a black hole or a white hole. So let's get back to this because I've got 3 more minutes. One of the other so geodesics is another area I'm going to be looking at. I'm going to come back to that. If you go and look at that, look at the video, you'll see about geodesics. A real good question that I had for myself is, when he talked about the inertial observer, if you were literally on your own, can you self-reflect? How do we deal with that? We don't seem to deal really well with it. We call it torture, actually, solitary confinement. That ability to not be able to bounce off something. And I've previously talked about that as people seem to the world occurs to people as a mirror, as a reflection of them. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter how conscious or unconscious you are, the world occurs as a mirror. Moving through space and time. One of the things that artificial intelligence models really struggle with is storing memories as part of the mathematics. So there needs to be that. Like we know how to store memories from a computer perspective, but how do we simulate a conscious being or how a conscious being learns and have that being store memories? It needs to be part of the mathematics. What else was there? So one of the funny things is the inertial observer is that we're not a massive fan of sitting around thinking about ourselves. If you look out in the world, or even at your own behaviour, so many of us are in the rat race, too busy doing things. It's like we've got to be doing something. We've got to be running like a spaceship so we don't fall into all the way down. Information. Now, if you watched a previous video of mine, I said that information is self-referential. That it's self-referential means that the minute you say it, not only does it dictate the now, but it also dictates the future. In other words, it modifies your future. It modifies how you're going to see the future at all. Because if you've never learned about something, you'd have no idea what it looks like. If you've learned about it, it modifies your future. You're more likely to see that in your future. There's a very cool thing out there, I can't remember what they actually call it, where, say for instance, you buy a car, you start to see those cars more often. So just by having the information that car exists, modifies what you see in the present. One of the really cool things about it is all objects fall the same. You know, and if this theory does work, it's essentially saying that all human beings are the same. It's just that we've got to take away our past information, the things we've made it mean, the way the information's been stored and how we interact. And really cool one, the free-falling charge is not accelerating, the stationary one is. It seems like we're the opposite of that. Like it'd occur like the free-falling object, the moving object, would be accelerating and the stationary one wouldn't be, but it's opposites. So this comes back to this opposite thing again. So these are all very, very cool. I've listened to that video and many others several times, and I'm going to continue to do so. And I'm actually going to attempt to have a crack at proving this mathematically, or proving some of it mathematically. That's going to be fun. So I've got to try to prove what it looks like to be in a gravity well, or bend space-time, and how that would look informationally. If you're really interested in some other listening or other watching, go and have a look at how sound waves are created using sine and cosine. Or any wave really, the electromagnetic spectrum. So look forward to seeing you again soon. I apologise if that wasn't particularly and super clear. 10 minutes and I'll be back. I only had 10 minutes and I'll be back soon to do some more.